So let's talk about obviously the probability-based mindset. You know, as you say, and as we know, majority of traders, that is their first experience. You know, is when they get into trading.
Yeah.
And normally it doesn't actually happen in terms of like trying to be aware of it and implement it until sometimes a lot of the time years in. You know, so not even just when they get into trading, a couple of years into it that they start to actually sort of piece together, wait, the way I need to think needs to change. But as you say, you were 14?
Yeah, about 14.
You were 14. So what was it like for you then? Was it a case where were you aware at the time you were learning this new sort of skill?
No, I think it was, we were lucky in the sense of the game itself was mechanical, right? So if you think of technical analysis, I guess in a way, imagine if every candle was always exactly the same to your textbook model of entry, so to speak. That side we were lucky about. So what was left, I guess, was the psychology side of things, which looking back in hindsight, I realized a lot of time where my psychology was not up to par, so to speak, meaning like I'd lose like 5 in a row and I'd be like, today's a bad day, we're done. And you log out and that's it. And I'd look back and I'm like, you would never do that if you actually knew you were the house and you fully believed in the system and you knew it. And because it was purely mechanical, right? And even funny enough, right? Like we had our co-hosts and we knew some of them had bad luck, right? Like I remember we had this friend, Matt. He was horrible. He was very bad at what he does, even though it's purely mechanical. If he got the bet, we were like, Matt, no, like, because we do things called splits, because let's say the bet was too big. It could be like sometimes like $3,000-$4,000 and you don't want to take that whole risk on yourself. Yeah. Right. Well, I realized that in hindsight, and I didn't know this at the time, but RuneScape Gold was kind of used before Bitcoin, like before even Bitcoin became like known as like the
exchange,
the dark mark like currency or whatever. RuneScape Gold was actually used for that. There was a huge black market for it, and it's like you don't know any of this, right? I'm just a child, like even at the time. Funny enough, I forgot to mention this, but the guy who got me in, he's like, there was a buy-in for the clan, and I was like, how much is the buy-in? And he basically said, I think off memory, it was like $5,000, and I was like, dude, I don't have $5,000. I was like, nah, dude. And he's like, I'll pay it for you, and I'm just like, still humoring him. I'm like, all right, bro, pay the $5,000 for me.
Yeah.
And he's like, just pay it back, right? And then he paid, and I actually remember that particular person. I paid it back like within 2 days. And I was like, no way. Like, it was, I still didn't even understand what money was at that age. Like, I'm not like, you're 14, you still know what it was. But you're not thinking in like mortgages and luxuries and generational wealth.
You don't
just
equate
like,
5,000.
Yeah, you're just like, can I afford lunch tomorrow? And that's about it, right? Can I ride the bus and all that? So I would say what ended up happening is the emotional volatility every single day. And in a way, because it was fun, like we did it all day, every day. Like when I'm saying like weekends, Friday to Sunday, it's all you did. During the week, you'd wake up early to do this, go before school, after school, like because it was a 24-hour job in a way, you can kind of just hop on whenever you want. Yeah, exactly, right? Like imagine you can always trade if you wanted to, hypothetically, right? It was that same kind of knowledge and logic. And then, so what ended up happening is you experience every sequence possible. You experience the days where you do not lose, no matter what. Like you're always winning, and you experience the days where you're always losing.
Okay.
You're experiencing the days where it's like you lose the wrong ones, and you win. Like, you know what I mean? So like you can, for example, have 10 trades, lose 8 of them, but you won the one trade that mattered because the risk reward being the bet in that case was worth it. And all of a sudden you had a 10 or 20% strike rate that day, but you're still up on the day. Then you had the opposite where you win 8, but you lose the wrong one. And versus like trading, you tend, like most people tend to trade a degree of fixed risk.
Yeah.
We didn't have that luxury because it was almost like if you didn't take the bet, someone else will. Right. And from like a business point of view, you don't turn down the client. So that was the side where it kind of now forced you to always take the trade, so to speak. And in a way, kind of taught you something, because what actually happened then, so people would lose their money sometimes being our co-host, and we'd loan each other out. So, and when we loaned, we never like charged each other interest. You never like, you're not like, oh, whatever. And it was interesting because you would know your friend could owe 4 different people money. And that was not worrisome for you because we knew we'd make it back. And I was like, eventually in hindsight, I was like, isn't that the truest understanding of probabilities in a way where someone could be so down, but you observe that and you're like, yeah, he's just down because he's in this unlucky sequence. Yeah. But if he continues to do this, he will always end up like up in the end and then pay everyone back. And that happened so many times that from all the legitimate names, because there were people that scammed, of course, but all the legitimate names, like myself included, whenever I took out a loan from someone, you just paid it back. And the big reason is just because you didn't hold the gold in RuneScape. So a lot of times you cashed it out for real life money.
Okay. And
then just because the game would ban you and stuff, so you didn't want to like kind of get banned with the money and it's just gone, right? So people kept a finite amount of risk, so to speak, and then that's X amount of thousands of dollars, and then you would see it. But I guess when you live it for years, when eventually I got into trading, I was like, I understand probabilities through and through, even as a life perspective of you can look at something, and I guess I realized that eventually was people can, if I tell you, for example, I don't know, like you have an 80% chance of whatever happening here, you will believe that 80% with 100% of your belief. But the 20%, you won't give it that equal 100% belief. And then so when it does, that 20% happens, you almost feel betrayed. And then that betrayal is like targeted to you, right? Because it's you're the one getting like fucked over in a way. And it was that same logic, whereas like for myself, I guess at the start, I was like, balance of probability, my TA is bad. You know, and I knew how to accept that already because I guess I had a bit of a balanced perspective, and no offense to a lot of people, but I came into trading and I was like, and I gave myself 5 years to succeed. Whereas I see like having coached a lot of students now and in and outside of Falcon, people do come in with this like 6 month to a year timeline. Whereas I well and truly, like I remember at the time, and funny enough, bringing it back to the IP side of things, why I also thought it was a scam was it was only $300. I looked at like Ivy League schools in the United States, for instance.
Of course, yeah.
I was like, okay, if you want to become a top lawyer in the world and you go to Harvard and you pay, I don't know how much Harvard is, like $250,000 or $500,000 or whatever. I was like, if you can make the same amount of money, if not more in trading, you're really going to pay $300 in 6 months? I was like, no, that makes no sense. I did believe that you could make it. I knew there was like the math was there, the liquidity was there. I just never believed the whole, I can do this in 6 months if I work really hard. I was like, that makes no sense. There are people that do this all day, every day, for decades. There's computers like JP Morgan and all these things, and it's like it'll take a bit more time. So I think that mentality kept me grounded in a way. And then having had the years of psychology already, it kind of made it like, okay, I just have to get my TA to a level where I'm like, if I know I'm doing this part right, then it's probabilities.
So essentially for you, it was like you already had built the hardest part, the hardest element of trading already. You'd built that strong foundation on that side. So essentially it was like, yeah, most people is the opposite way around. Technical analysis
You
first.
can pick it up relatively quickly.
Yeah. But most people aren't going to find themselves in that situation more than likely, unless, as you say, said off camera, like how many people find themselves working behind the scenes in a casino, for example. You might work in a casino, for example.
But you're not like dealing the odds, not your money.
You might just be dealing the cards.
Yeah, exactly. So you're kind of like almost zoned out in a way because it's just a script you're kind of running, you know?
Yeah, 100%.